Hi, welcome to a new video of the Visual Brain. Today we will be doing something a little different. Today we will be summarizing a movie. So if you didn't watch it and you prefer a summary, or if you have watched it and you want to refresh your memory, you have reached the right place. The film is Patorcito, an Argentine animated film released in 2004 that has as its main character the indigenous Tehuelche Patorcito, who originally comes from the comic universe created by the Argentinian illustrator Dante Quinterno. This character first appeared in 1945 as an alternative aimed at kids to the character which it is based on, Patoruzú, a character by the same creator. Patoruzú, who had already appeared in 1928, narrated from then on and for 4 decades the adventures of a generous indigenous landowner at the beginning of the Argentinian economic depression. The Patorcito film is built on the same foundations that gave rise to Quinterno's comic strip. Patorcito's story begins in ancient Egypt, in 2200 BC. There we meet Pharaoh Patorcek, who has a very Argentinian look, just like his sphinx, and apparently has a pet eagle. Then we meet the villain of the story, Arotep, who steals a medallion that apparently gives him the power to destroy the world. Luckily, Patorcek manages to take away half of the medallion, and for some reason everyone runs away from Egypt, despite not having done anything wrong, thus arriving in Argentine Patagonia, where they intend to live happily and peacefully. We are now in the 21st century, where we meet the protagonist of this film, Patorcito and his grandmother Chacha, and they have a talk, very in the style of The Lion King, in which Chacha reveals to him that in the future he will be chieftain, just like the Patorcek before him.
Look, Simba, everything the light touches is our kingdom.
Wow.
Later, we meet a group of children, Cachicó, Tino, and Moncho, led by the first. They are trying to steal wild horses by trapping them in a circle of fire. Luckily, Patorcito comes to the rescue, driving a jeep, despite having an adult sitting next to him. He soon manages to get all the horses out of danger, but when he is about to leave, he is trapped next to a small foal that he decides to help. In the end, both come out safe and sound, but not without some scares along the way. Later, we see Cachicó, who managed to escape with one of the wild horses, and in a chat with his minions, he reveals that he plans to be the next chief of the Tehuelches. Meanwhile, Patorcito returns to his house, where a surprise party for his birthday awaits him, and there we meet Isidorito, Patorcito's best friend. Then everyone goes to the town, where with a song they show us everything that the town has prepared for Patorcito's birthday, and we can see various typical aspects of Argentinian cultures, such as food, drinks, and typical dances.
Un asado y empanadas, hay como una tonelada.
Unos bien calentitos.
Pruébese unos pastelitos y una trucha a la parrilla. Una cosita sencilla. Feliz cumpleaños, feliz. Feliz cumpleaños, feliz. Feliz cumpleaños, feliz.
Next, we see that in a stall there is a swindler fortune teller trying to deceive a foreign tourist who calls himself Andrew Ferguson and claims to be an archaeologist, but it is a face that we have already seen at the beginning of the film, with an object that we have also seen already. As Patorcito was welcoming this tourist, Cachicó arrives riding his wild horse, which is out of control, and throws him onto the floor in a corral. Once inside, Cachicó challenges Patorcito to a fight, but just at that moment the grounds begin to shake and everyone lives in fear. We soon discover that they are a group of men on horseback. Patorcito remains calm and stands there waiting for their arrival. The men on horseback stop in front of him, and his leader gets off his horse and presents himself with a bow. Next, he communicates to Patroncito that since he is the direct descendant of Patroncito I, it is his right to become the next chieftain of the Tehuelches. He then adds that the coronation ceremony will take place in 3 days, but before that, he will have to fulfill a series of tests, of which Patroncito had no idea.
Traerás una piedra azul del cráter del gran volcán, un amuleto de la cueva de los antiguos y una pluma de cóndor.
Así lo haré, Po.
Patroncito accepts the challenge, and before retiring, the men on horseback tell him that if no one objects, the responsibility of being a chief will be his. Then Ferguson approaches Patroncito to ask him to accompany him on the trip, since he wants to find the Lost Valley, a sacred place where only the ancient and the chief can enter, and where the coronation will take place. However, Chacha tells him that this will not be possible, and invites him to return to his country. Here Patroncito gives some very wise words, that there is no reason to treat him like an intruder, just because he's a foreigner. As the party continues, we can see Ferguson riding a horse, swearing that he will find a way to get to the Lost Valley.
Ahora voy a tener que buscar otra forma de llegar a ese valle. Y juro que lo haré. Nadie va a detenerme. ¡Nadie!
I see you, Homer. That's very nice.
That same afternoon, Patroncito is reunited with the fool that he had saved from the fire, which is very happy to see him, and invites him to climb onto his back. Patroncito is puzzled, but soon realizes that this fool wants to stay with him. At that moment, he decides to call it Pamperito, in honor of the pampero, a type of wine current that occurs only in Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil.
Quiere decir que te quedas conmigo. Vas a ser mi amigo. Y te voy a llamar Pamperito.
Meanwhile, in the town bar, Cachicó and his friends meet. He's annoyed by the future coronation of Patroncito, saying that if that happens, they will not be able to steal when they want, thus implying that they are currently without a leader. There is also Ferguson, who, in the most faithful Disney style, presents himself and tells his intentions to the rhythm of a song. He says that he wants to get his medallion back and that he is the most evil, that he will reign the world when he has the medallion. Here we find out that the power of the medallion comes from evil, in case it wasn't obvious enough.
Vengo de un país lejano para recobrar lo que busco. Y al que se cruce lo asusto, porque soy el más malvado. Maula, astuto, pendenciero, conmigo tengan cuidado. Y que nadie se interponga. Que valga la aclaración. Voy a reinar en el mundo cuando tenga el medallón. Mi fuerza será increíble.
Then he proposes to Cachicó an alliance to stop Patroncito. The next day, we can see Patroncito and his friend Isidorito go on an adventure, with Ferguson, Cachicó, and his minions spying on them and following them from afar. The first stop is the Great Volcano, an active volcano where Patroncito must retrieve a special stone called the Blue Stone, and there he tells us that this test represents the ability of the Tehuelches. Mr. Ferguson and Cachicó's group arrive at the place, trying to sabotage the test by throwing a large rock inside the volcano, while Patroncito was about to reach the stone, unleashing a chain reaction that leads the volcano to erupt. Fortunately, Patroncito and Isidorito manage to escape alive and go to cool off in a nearby stream. Suddenly, they hear some cries for help, and Patroncito runs to see what was happening.
¿Qué es eso?
¡A buscar problemas!
There is a girl who is being cornered by two cougars, but in the end, she manages to scare them away with a great roar. There they introduce themselves, and she tells him that her name is Malén, and that she is the granddaughter of Egolia, the sage of the tribe, and takes them with him. Upon reaching Egolia's place, he receives them very kindly.
¿Y este de dónde salió? ¡Déjame agarrar, Maura! ¡No! ¡No! ¡Abuelo, no!
Realizing that it was Patrocito who had arrived, he invites them to his home for the night. The next day, we see a classic training scene, where Patrocito demonstrates all his physical skills. But Egolia tells him that not everything resides in the physical, and in order to improve, he teaches him his way of seeing the world, from the heart. At night, Egolia takes Patrocito to visit the old cave, which, with a very reliable security system, accepts Patrocito to enter and reveal its secrets.
La cueva te ha aceptado.
There we learn that the power of the medallion is capable of destroying the world, and the pharaoh Patarusek came to Patagonia with a group of Patarusek to hide the half that they had ripped off Arotep. The Tehuelches already lived there and welcomed Patarusek and his people, even making him their chief. Egolia then reveals that half of the medallion is hidden in the Lost Valley. At that moment, Mr. Ferguson makes his appearance, although it is not clear how the magic cave let him enter there, and only at this moment it begins to tremble and collapse, blocking the exit, leaving Egolia and Patrocito trapped inside. Meanwhile, Malén and Isidorito go looking for Patrocito, and also manage to enter the cave without any problem, although they do find the entrance to the main hall blocked. On the other hand, Mr. Ferguson arrives with Gachiko and tells them that he managed to lock Patrocito and Egolia in the cave, and that now they must go to meet the ancients in order to follow them and find the Lost Valley. After walking through the cave, Patrocito and Egolia find an exit, not without having a few tense moments on the way. Finally, Pamperito finds them and takes them out of the cave. As a prize, Egolia gives Patrocito a medallion and sends him to the next point of the mission, which consists of going through a mountainous labyrinth, in which according to him, it is very easy.
We're gonna live!
To get lost.
We're gonna die!
Malén offers to guide them, and they leave. Unfortunately, it begins to dawn, and Malén tells him that they will not be able to arrive on time, because the road is very long. However, Mr. Ferguson and Gachiko arrive perfectly before him. Patrocito then decides to climb to the top of the mountain and asks his ancestor for a sign. At that moment, a condor appears and takes him flying on his back to where the ancients are waiting. After giving him one of his feathers, Patrocito finally fulfills the last test. Gachiko feels betrayed by Ferguson, but he decides to propose Gachiko as Patrocito's challenger.
¡Todavía te atreves a aparecer, sotreta!
¡Guardias! ¡Atrapen al intruso!
Patrocito todavía no es cacique. Otro indio tehuelche lo ha desafiado. Adelante, Gachiko.
Así que andas con estos malandras. Me lo tendrías que haber imaginado.
¿Y cómo manda la ley de los tehuelches?
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
The old man asks Patorcito if he accepts the challenge, and he says no, and they take him to the ballet and they crown him, and the film ends. No, just kidding. Patorcito accepts the challenge, so everyone with the eyes covered leave to the Lost Valley, where the challenge will take place. Upon arriving to the valley, the ancient man tells them what the challenge will be, and then gives Cachicó weapons and a horse.
Solo quien logre conquistar a la montaña sagrada y sea elegido el cacique de los tehuelches podrá salir de esta.
And here I wonder, what was the point of Patorcito fulfilling the other test? Shouldn't Cachicó have at least tried to do them too? Well, I guess it's their culture and we have to respect it. Meanwhile, Mr. Ferguson and Cachicó's friends try to reach the mountain earlier by water. The challenge begins. Patorcito saves Cachicó and then he betrays him, but ends up helping him unintentionally.
Oh, the deception! The betrayal, man, you deceived me!
When Patorcito is about to reach the mountain, he falls into a trap, but manages to get free, and when he tries to cross the bridge, Ferguson cuts it, leaving Patorcito fall into the river. The town people see him and believe that Patorcito is dead, but actually he's alive! And manages to enter the mountain. Meanwhile, Mr. Ferguson and Cachicó reach the mountain, and there we discover that it is actually a magic golden pyramid that feeds the valley with melted water from the glacier on which it is located. Once inside, Mr. Ferguson manages to get the other half of the medallion, releasing all his power, betraying Cachicó and sending away towards the valley.
¿Qué pasa?
Que aún no entiendes. No soy Ferguson. Mi nombre es... ¡Argentinian!
Meanwhile, Arotep appears before the town with a sudden change of accent.
¡Pueblo de los antiguos! ¡Conozcan a su nuevo faraón! ¡Agotay! Desde ahora hará lo que yo les ordene, o conocerán mi poder.
And when Patorcito tries to stop him, Arotep goes inside a statue that turns out to be a giant robot and heads toward the valley. However, Patorcito confronts him on board of a ship, while the town attacks Arotep with stones. Arotep responds by throwing pieces of ice into the city, while Patorcito tries to surround him with ropes, until he manages to make him fall. At this point, the movie apparently ran out of time, because it solves everything in 5 minutes. Patorcito manages to recover the medallion and return it to its place in the pyramid, and is then proclaimed as the new chief.
Patorcito, te proclamamos nuestro cacique.
Patroncito is invited to stay and live in the valley, but he decides to return to his house with Pamperito. Malén, Cachicó and his friends stay in the valley. Patroncito arrives again with his family and the film says goodbye with Patroncito running along the beach, running Pamperito. Well, this has been my summary of Patroncito. I always liked it when I was a child, and I think that it is on par with other more well-known animated films, although it is not absent from plot flaws, as we have already seen. As for some curiosities of this film, we can mention that despite having been produced in Argentina with voices of Argentine artists, it was redubbed into neutral Spanish for its broadcast through Latin America, since the distribution of the film was in charge of Buena Vista International, currently renamed to Walt Disney Studio Motion Pictures, and the dubbing was done by Disney Character Voices International Inc. Technically, this is a Disney movie, since Disney owns 1/3 of its production company, Patagonic Film Group, and also, as we saw it was in charge of the dubbing and distribution, having also been broadcasted on Disney Channel Latin America numerous times. This story also had a sequel released in 2006 that I would love to watch and summarize if you support this video by leaving your like, comment and sharing it on your social networks.